He visited his wife's grave expecting silence. Instead, he found a homeless little girl, sobbing there. What he discovered next changed everything. The cemetery was quiet, the crisp autumn air carrying the faint rustling of leaves. Daniel Whitmore, a self-made millionaire, adjusted the flowers in his hands as he approached his wife's gravestone. It had been 5 years. 5 years since he lost the love of his life. 5 years of grief, guilt, and emptiness. But today, something was different. As he neared the grave, he stopped cold. A little girl, no older than 7 or 8, was crouched by the tombstone, her small body trembling as she sobbed. Daniel's heart clenched. Who was she? And why was she crying at his wife's grave? He took a cautious step forward. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you okay?" The girl flinched, looking up with wide, tear-filled eyes. She was thin, her clothes worn, her cheeks smudged with dirt. Daniel's stomach twisted. She was homeless, alone. She wiped her nose with her sleeve and whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother her." Daniel frowned. Bother her. He crouched beside her, his voice gentle. "Did you know my wife?" The girl sniffled, nodding slowly. Daniel's breath caught. How? His wife had passed away years ago. How could this little girl have known her? And then, in a tiny, trembling voice, she spoke words that sent chills down his spine. "She used to take care of me." Daniel's breath hitched. His wife took care of her. His mind raced. How was that possible? He had never heard of this little girl before. He swallowed hard, keeping his voice steady. "What do you mean, sweetheart? How did you know my wife?" The girl sniffled, wiping her eyes. "Her name was Emily, right?" Daniel's chest tightened. Hearing her name from this little girl's lips nearly broke him. "Yes," he said softly. "Her name was Emily." The girl gave a weak smile. "She was really nice to me." Daniel frowned. "When?" She hesitated, hugging her tiny arms around herself. "Before she went away." Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. "Where did you meet her?" The girl pointed toward the city. "At the shelter. She used to come every week with food and blankets. She always smiled at me. She even gave me this." She reached into the pocket of her tattered coat and pulled out a delicate silver locket. Daniel's breath caught. He knew that locket. It had belonged to Emily. He had bought it for her on their anniversary. She never took it off. So how did this little girl have it? His heart pounded. There was more to this story, and he wasn't leaving until he knew the truth. Daniel stared at the locket, his hands shaking. This was impossible. Emily never mentioned a little girl, never told him about visiting a shelter. His voice was barely a whisper. Where did you get that?" The girl looked down at the locket, her fingers tracing the tiny, heart-shaped pendant. "She gave it to me," she murmured. "The last time I saw her." Daniel swallowed hard. "When was that?" The girl hesitated. "The day before she went away." Her voice cracked, and fresh tears welled in her eyes. Daniel felt his entire body go cold. The day before Emily died? His mind reeled. Emily's death had been sudden, an accident that shattered his entire world. But now, there was something more, something he never knew. The girl sniffled. "She told me to keep it safe. She said if anything happened to her, this locket would always mean someone loved me." Daniel's heart clenched. Emily had known something. He took a deep breath, trying to keep his emotions in check. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The girl wiped her eyes. "Lily." Daniel exhaled, his chest tightening. "Lily, where's your family?" She hesitated. Then, in a small, broken voice, she said, "I don't have one." His stomach dropped. No family, no home. And yet Emily had cared for her, protected her. Daniel looked at the fragile little girl sitting beside his wife's grave, And in that moment, he knew. Emily may have been gone, but her mission wasn't over. And neither was his. He reached out, his voice firm but gentle. "Come with me, Lily." Her eyes widened. "Where?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Home." Lily froze, her small hands clutching the locket tightly. "Home," she whispered, as if the word was foreign to her. Daniel nodded. "Yes, with me." Her wide, tear-filled eyes searched his face, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. "But why?" His throat tightened. Because Emily would have wanted this, because no child should be alone, because deep in his heart, he already knew. This was the right thing to do. He took a steady breath. "Because my wife loved you. And if she cared for you, then so do I." Lily's lip quivered. "But I don't want to be a burden." Daniel shook his head firmly. "You won't be. You never were." Silence hung between them. Then slowly, Lily reached out and took his hand. A rush of emotion surged through him, as if Emily herself was there, guiding them both. As he helped Lily to her feet, he looked back at his wife's grave one last time. For years, he had come here searching for peace. Now he was leaving with something even greater. A second chance, a purpose, a daughter. As they walked away, Lily clutched his hand a little tighter. And for the first time in years, Daniel Whitmore didn't feel alone anymore. 1 year later, Daniel stood in the backyard, watching as Lily laughed, running through the garden Emily had once loved. She was different now, happier, stronger, no longer the fragile, lost child he had met at the cemetery. Adopting her hadn't been easy. There were long legal battles, sleepless nights, moments of doubt. But none of that mattered now, because Lily was home. She ran up to him, holding out a drawing. "Look, it's us." Daniel took the paper and felt his chest tighten. It was a simple sketch, Lily standing between him and Emily, holding their hands. She beamed. "Mom's still with us, right?" Daniel swallowed past the lump in his throat and smiled. "Always." Lily hugged him tight. "I love you, Dad." His breath hitched. Dad. For years, he thought his family had ended with Emily's death. But fate had given him another chance. As he held Lily close, he looked up at the sky, whispering, "Thank you, Emily." And for the first time in forever, his heart felt whole again.